At Ribe's 8th-century riverbank, measured plots appeared before Scandinavia possessed anything resembling a network of modern towns. Who organized that market remains debated, yet its consequences reached far beyond one muddy landing place. Seasonal visitors brought materials, skills, news, and obligations into repeated contact. From such unequal coastal nodes, early Scandinavia became connected without becoming politically unified. The first links were not lines on a map but dependable occasions for exchange. Farm households normally produced much of what they consumed while needing selected goods and specialist services from elsewhere. Metalworkers, bead makers, comb makers, merchants, sailors, and food suppliers gathered where boats could approach safely. Coastal access reduced transport costs across a region where overland travel was often slow and demanding. Rivers and fjords extended maritime movement inland, connecting harbors with agricultural and resource-producing hinterlands. Markets converted that geography into schedules, expectations, and places where strangers could transact. Ribe began during the early 8th century beside the river leading toward the Wadden Sea. Excavation has identified organized plots, paths, craft debris, and layers created through recurring commercial activity. Bed production left colorful fragments and failed pieces that reveal manufacture rather than simple ownership. Coins and imported materials place the settlement within contacts extending toward the North Sea world. None of those finds proves that every object arrived through a direct voyage from its place of origin. Goods usually moved through several hands, with value and information changing at each stop. Ribe connected local producers to wider circuits because people returned often enough for exchange to become predictable. That predictability required protection, rules, or patronage, although the earliest authority is not securely named. An elite could profit from tolls and control, while merchants benefited from an accepted meeting ground. The arrangement was cooperative and coercive at once, since safety often came with political claims. Farther north, Kaupang developed beside the Oslo Fjord during the early Viking Age. Its name later became a general term associated with a market, but archaeology reveals a particular settlement history. Plots, workshops, imported objects, weights, and coins indicate sustained craft and commercial activity. Kaupang opened maritime access to southern Norway while drawing products from surrounding farms and uplands. Iron, stone, hides, antler, food, and other materials could enter exchange through regional intermediaries. Visiting ships did not need to cross every sea when neighboring ports relayed their cargo. This relay system mattered more than spectacular individual voyages for keeping ordinary trade in motion. Small working craft moved provisions and people between local landings that leave faint archaeological traces. Larger cargo vessels connected major nodes, carrying greater loads with different designs from warships. Market networks therefore depended upon a hierarchy of boats, as well as a hierarchy of settlements. Eastward, Birka occupied Bjorko in Lake Mälar, then connected more directly with the Baltic through navigable waters. The settlement emerged in the later 8th century and combined harbor activity, craft areas, defenses, and extensive cemeteries. Nearby Hovgården is commonly associated with elite authority over the market and surrounding landscape. Birka linked the Mälar region with Baltic routes carrying silver, textiles, beads, furs, and many other goods. Its graves display varied objects, yet burial ritual cannot provide a simple census of occupations or origins. Foreign-made material establishes connection more securely than it identifies the birthplace of the buried person. Weights and scales reveal transactions, but they do not preserve every price or bargaining custom. Arabic silver coins reached the north through long eastern chains rather than one Scandinavian corridor. Once cut or weighed, silver could function by mass, beyond the issuing government's political reach. Markets helped strangers assess that metal through shared practices of weighing and testing. Such practical conventions connected communities even when their languages, loyalties, and laws differed. Hedeby formed another kind of junction near the base of the Jutland Peninsula. Its position joined a Baltic inlet with routes toward the North Sea and the continental south. Goods could cross the narrow land passage instead of sailing around Jutland's dangerous northern waters. Harbor structures, streets, workshops, houses, graves, defenses, and ship remains document a settlement of exceptional scale. Hedeby also lay near the Donavirk, binding commerce to a strategically controlled border landscape. Royal protection could encourage exchange while simultaneously channeling it through a taxable and defensible place. Frankish written sources notice rulers and political conflict more readily than routine transactions on the waterfront. Waterlogged deposits restore some of that missing life through wood, leather, textiles, and organic refuse. These preserved materials reveal residents maintaining a working settlement rather than merely attending an occasional fair. By the 9th and 10th centuries, Hedeby connected Western European, Baltic, and Scandinavian circuits. Connection did not mean all major ports flourished at exactly the same time. Markets expanded, contracted, relocated, and sometimes vanished as routes and political protection changed. Ribe's early craft focus differed from Birka's island position, Kaupang's Norwegian hinterland, and Hedeby's portage. Their differences made the network useful because each node concentrated resources unavailable at the others. A sailor carrying whetstones did not perform the same economic role as a merchant handling luxury textiles. Craft specialists could buy food locally while selling products to travelers who carried them onward. Farmers gained selected imports without abandoning agricultural work for distant voyages. Elites obtained display goods, weapons, and silver that strengthened competitive gift-giving. Dependent laborers and captives also moved through these networks, though archaeology rarely recovers individual transactions clearly. Exchange should not be romanticized as an entirely peaceful alternative to raiding. Protection, tribute, enslavement, theft, and commerce could coexist around the same maritime infrastructure. A harbor attractive to merchants also concentrated wealth for attackers. Defenses at market settlements record risk without identifying every threat that prompted construction. Political rulers responded by guarding routes, relocating traders, or incorporating markets within larger territorial ambitions. The Royal Frankish Annals report that the Danish king Godfred destroyed the Slavic trading center of Rerik in 808. The same account says merchants were transferred to Hedeby, linking commercial geography with royal strategy. As a Frankish court record, the annals frame events through imperial concerns and cannot explain every local interest. Still, their notice complements archaeology, showing that markets could be deliberately redirected. Connections across early Scandinavia were thus built as much through political choices as favorable coastlines. Natural harbors created opportunities, but jetties, roads, plot divisions, and defenses made those opportunities durable. Laborers continually repaired these features against water, traffic, fire, and decay. Women participated in production and exchange, especially through textiles and household provisioning, although exact market roles varied. Children and dependent workers also contributed labor that written accounts largely ignored. The market's apparent bustle rested on food arriving regularly from farms and fisheries. Without grain, livestock products, fuel, and fresh water, imported silver could not sustain a settlement. Coastal nodes, therefore, connected countryside to sea rather than replacing rural society. Their influence traveled back inland through objects, measurements, styles, stories, and altered demand. A bead found at a farm could mark the final stage of a chain beginning far beyond Scandinavia. Its route remains unknown unless context and material analysis narrow the possibilities. Archaeology maps distributions more reliably than it reconstructs individual merchant biographies. Othere's late 9th century account offers a rare named traveler describing routes involving northern Norway, Kaupang, and Hedeby. His report survives through an Old English adaptation created for King Alfred's intellectual world. It gives valuable geographic knowledge while presenting northern movement to a distant royal audience. The account's travel times indicate possibility under reported conditions, not an eternal shipping schedule. Weights, standardized spaces, and recognized authorities reduced uncertainty without eliminating fraud or conflict. Seasonality remained decisive because weather, harvests, sea ice, and agricultural duties shaped attendance. Some settlements supported year-round residents, while other coastal markets may have operated intermittently. Their archaeological signatures differ, warning against forcing every landing into an urban category. What joined early Scandinavia was not a single commercial capital or centrally planned maritime system. It was an adaptable chain whose nodes specialized, competed, and depended upon surrounding communities. The chain also reached beyond Scandinavia from its beginning, especially into Frisian, Frankish, Baltic, and Slavic worlds. Calling it purely Scandinavian hides the outsiders whose goods, ships, knowledge, and labor sustained exchange. By concentrating encounters, coastal markets accelerated craft specialization and offered rulers new opportunities for control. They also gave inland products access to distant consumers through many modest transfers. Later towns inherited parts of this commercial geography, but some early centers lost their roles entirely. Hedeby declined and was abandoned as nearby Schleswig gained importance during the 11th century. Ribe, Kaupang, Birka, and Hedeby never formed a league, shared government, or uniform identity. Their enduring achievement was practical. They made repeated movement between different Scandinavian regions easier to expect. Long before kingdoms fixed firmer borders, the coastline had already taught markets how to connect unlike communities.